The people that father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal, providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it, exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas, working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective, a team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom, investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple: to obtain a favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
This is Attorney Augustus Corbett. I hope you're doing well on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Now, before I get started, let me just make sure a couple of things are happening the way they're supposed to happen here today. All right, I think they are. Again, power to the people. God bless you all. This is Attorney Augustus Corbett. And I have some things that I want to share with you today about the Voting Rights Act. And before I do, please, if you will, take a second and hit your share button so that other people can follow what's going on with the Voting Rights Act. Please, it is crucial. It is critical. It is top priority. It is very, very, very important. So hit your share button. Let's get this out to as many people as possible. We cannot allow folks to take away our right to vote. We can't do it. And part of what is needed to prevent that is being informed, being educated about what's happening, all right? And that's the reason that I'm coming to you today live. And by the way, welcome to our LinkedIn Live audience. I was recently approved to do videos on the LinkedIn app. I'm so excited about that. Opens us up to a whole nother audience. So again, welcome LinkedIn Live, and we hope that you benefit from what we're going to share today as well. All right, so today is a significant day in African American history, but for all the wrong reasons. Let me explain what I'm saying. 13 years ago today, the United States Supreme Court issued a case entitled Shelby County versus Holder. 13 years ago today. Okay, hold on, I'm wrong. They released it in 2013, so that's 8 years ago today. 8 years ago today, June 25th, 8 years ago today, SCOTUS, the United States Supreme Court, released an opinion that has had awful effects for the voting rights of Black America. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Again, the name of that case is Shelby County versus Holder. Shelby County is Shelby County. I just got word that the title of today's live is Critical Race Theory. I'm sorry about that. We're talking about the Voting Rights Act. So we will change that later. But this live is about the Voting Rights Act. Now, again, 8 years ago today, Shelby County versus Holder was released, was handed down, was issued by the United States Supreme Court. And it did serious damage to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, okay? The Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 required certain states to get pre-clearance before they made any changes to their voting laws. Those were states that had traditionally been very hostile to Black voting rights. They had constructed all types of hindrances to blacks voting, such as poll taxes, literacy tests, all sorts of things to try and stop us from voting. And so during the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act was passed, signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, and it required certain states, largely states in the South, to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department before they were able to change any of their voting laws, because everyone knew that they had a reputation of trying to stop black folks from voting. All right? And that was the law of the land up until 2013, 8 years ago. Now, the Voting Rights Act is still around, even after it was gutted under the Shelby County v. Holder case, still around, but critical parts of the Voting Rights Act was gutted, for lack of a better word. You know how you gut a fish and take all the insides of the fish out and leave pretty much nothing to the fish? That's what happened with the Voting Rights Act, okay? Specifically, the Voting Rights Act has three principal parts, yes, it had three principal parts: Section 2, Section 4, Section 5. Section 5 is still good. Section 2 is still good. Section 4 is what the Shelby County case pretty much just got rid of, abolished. Now, Section 2 is still good, and under Section 2, states can still be sued for violating folks' voter rights rights. In fact, AG Merrick Garland announced today that he was suing Georgia for their restrictive voting rights law that they recently passed a couple of months ago. All right, so we still can sue under Section 2. Now, I'm going to come back to Section 2 in just a moment, because it is also at risk of being gutted in just a couple of weeks. I'll come back to that in just a second. But Section 4 and Section 5 were at risk with the Shelby County v. Holder case, with the Shelby County, I'll just call it Shelby County for short. Now, Section 5 described what all of the prohibitions are in the Voting Rights Act, all the things that states cannot do, okay? The literacy taxes, the poll taxes, the literacy tests, all of that stuff is prescribed in Section 5. Now, Section 4, Section 4 determined Section 4 determined to whom Section 5 applied to, okay? Section 4 had a formula that determined which jurisdictions Section 5 applied to. And it was Section 4 that Shelby County got rid of, okay, Section 4. And what the U.S. Supreme Court said, essentially, said a lot, but to paraphrase it, they said that Congress needed to come up with a new formula, a new Section 4, because the majority in the Shelby County case felt that Section 4 was outdated. They said, hey, you just elected and reelected a black president, so black voting power is at parity with white voting power. There's no point in Section 4, or at least this draconian, outdated Section 4 anymore. And so the court said, Congress, you need to come up with a new Section 4. All right, and that is what Congress has done with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And I want to say exactly what it is here. I don't want to be mistaken. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, it's H.R. 4 and S 4236. And essentially, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act has a new formula. The problem is getting it through Congress, because Congress is split right now, right? Or at least the Senate is. The Senate is 50-50. And that means the Republicans can filibuster almost anything the Democrats try to do. And in order to overcome that filibuster, 10 of the Republicans need to side with the Democrats, and that's just not happening. That's just not happening. All right. So in order to get bills passed, the Senate needs 60 votes, and that means they need to get 10 of the Republicans to come over to their side. And with a lot of these legislative goals that the Democrats have, the Republicans are just not doing so. And that is the case with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. All right. Now, don't confuse the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act with the For the People Act. Those are two different things. Those are two different bills. For the People Act, it does deal with voting rights, but not necessarily deals with the Voting Rights Act. Okay, the For the People Act, it will overcome a lot of the stuff that we see states are doing now, like these restrictive voting laws, doing away with early voting, doing away with mail-in ballots. All of those things will be addressed in the For the People Act. Now, the Voting Rights Act, if it had not been gutted, these states would not have been able to do these restrictive voting rights laws in the first place. You see? Had Shelby County never been handed down, those states would have had to get pre-clearance before they could implement these restrictive voting rights laws. All right? But because Shelby County, in fact, gutted Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, the remedy now is For the People Act. For the People Act, since federal law trumps state law, it could overcome some of these restrictive disenfranchisement laws that we see states haven't passed. In fact, let me show you a map of states that have implemented these restrictive laws. All right, this map is good through May of 2021, and the states in the red or the orange, whatever color it is there, those states have indeed enacted restrictive voting laws. Okay, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, Indiana, and Iowa. The states in yellow are about to do the same. Okay, Texas, where I live here, Louisiana, Nevada, South Carolina, North Carolina, have some restrictive voting laws that they're trying to advance in their state legislatures. Well, the For the People Act would trump those restrictive voting laws. That's why the Republican Party, the GOP in the Senate, every one of them, all 50 senators, blocked even a debate on For the People Act. Okay, they blocked. It was just last week. They wouldn't even let the bill hit the floor to debate it. And the Democrats didn't have at least 10 Republicans to side with them to overcome that filibuster. So they are playing hardball with our voting rights, and we got to fight back. We cannot allow this to happen. We must fight back. We need to become offended by this, okay? We need to take offense to the GOP trying to disenfranchise us this way. We got to stand up to them. No, you can't do this. We're not going to let you do it. All right? We're not going to let you do it. So we got to see this for what it is. It is an effort to disempower, to disenfranchise us. It is an effort to sort of put us back in our place as it was during Jim Crow. And we can't let it happen. So that's why I keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and speaking up and speaking up and speaking up and speaking up and talking and talking and talking, because this is critical. This is critical. If we lose our right to vote, then we don't have a voice at the table when the laws are being made. And it's from those laws that policies and regulations and all of that are determined from the laws that are passed. Okay? The police departments, for example, they're able to do what they do because of the laws that either Congress passes or the U.S. Supreme Court hands down in its opinions. So we need people, we, African Americans, we need our voices heard at every stage of the political process, both national, state, and local, because all the wonderful rights that we enjoy right now, okay, the right to live where we want to live, the right to attend a school that we can afford to attend, the right to eat where we want to eat, all of those rights flow from our ability to influence the political system. And so if we're silenced, if our voices and our votes are silenced, then we can easily be relegated back to a system very similar to the Jim Crow system. And don't you think for a minute our opponents will not do that if they get the chance. They absolutely will. And we have to stand up to it. Now, let's see. Let's make sure I covered everything I want to cover in this video. So, again, today, 8 years ago today, the Shelby County v. Holder case was handed down. That case essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I want you to understand that. The Shelby County versus Holder. Why is it called Shelby County versus Holder? Because it's a county in Alabama, Shelby County, Alabama, that sued the Justice Department. Specifically, it sued Eric Holder, who was the AG in 2013. So that's why it's Shelby County. I see why. Sorry about that. No, sorry. All right, that should have eliminated that. I really apologize for that. Really apologize for that. I don't know how that crept up on me like that, but at any event, we're back now. So I was just basically reviewing what the significance of the Shelby County v. Holder case is all about. It essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And again, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 required states that had a horrible history of disenfranchising black voters. It required them to get clearance from the Justice Department before they could change their laws. Now, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act will reestablish Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act so that those states will once again need to get pre-approval before they change their voting rights laws. Now, why is that important? Because states like Georgia and these other states that have already implemented these restrictive voting rights laws would not been able to do that had the Voting Rights Act of 1965 been in full effect when they tried to enact those laws. In fact, as soon as the Shelby County case was handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court, those states began to implement and enact restrictive voting rights laws the next day, the very next day. That is exactly what they were holding their breath and waiting for. And when they got that Shelby County opinion, they immediately, right at that point, began to implement disenfranchisement laws. All right. Now, to deal with those laws immediately, For the People Act would deal with those restrictive voting rights laws immediately, but the GOP, all 50 senators of the GOP, all 50 GOP senators just last week would not vote to allow the For the People Act to even be debated. And of course, there are even a couple of Democrat senators who are sort of working with the Republicans. That is Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Sinema, I believe, of Arizona. Okay? But you know, look, with friends like that, you don't need enemies, right? And by the way, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm just for racial justice. I'm for racial justice. Okay, that's the way I see it. And at the moment, the GOP is standing in the way of full black voter participation. Ironically, it used to be Democrats back in the day, right? Back in the day, it was the Dixiecrats. It was the Jesse Helms and the Strom Thurmonds, who were both Democrats / Dixiecrats 50, 60, 70 years ago until they joined the Republican Party. So it's not necessarily what party someone is a part of. It's where their heart is. It's whether they are bigoted or not. It's whether they are racist or not. It's whether they are a white supremacist or not, right? So we got to fight back. That's the point I'm making today. We got to stand up against this. We cannot let this happen. We can't be lackadaisical. I know life is good for you. I know that you got a good job and you live in a nice home and things are good. I get it. But all of that can be taken away. All of that can be gone. All right? If we go to sleep and allow our basic voting rights to be taken away from us. And that is why I'm coming on the air to keep you informed, all right? To keep you informed of what is at stake, what hangs in the balance, all right? All right, I again apologize for those technical issues there a few minutes ago, but hopefully you understand what's going on with our voting rights. Probably next week or the week after that, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be handing down another case dealing with the Voting Rights Act. And this could really finish it off altogether, because right now, states can still be sued under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And it's Section 2 that is the heart of this case that we should get next week or the week after that. Probably next week, because most of the times the Supreme Court hands down all its cases in the month of June, and June ends next month. So probably next Monday, we will be getting this last opinion having to deal with the Voting Rights Act. And I fully suspect that it will also take Section 2 from the Voting Rights Act, which ultimately will just completely gut the thing, just totally gut it. It's amazing. This was passed in 1965, and it had tremendous benefits for the black community, and now it's almost gone. I mean, it boggles the mind that our opponents kept up the fight over all these years, and now they are about to win, to get another huge victory against us. And I'm not just talking, trying to scare you or being overly sensitive or any of that. We're fighting for our political life, if you will. We're fighting. We're literally in the struggle of our generation, literally. And what I'm seeing now with so many African Americans is sort of an indifference or completely unaware or preoccupied with other things until this hits us in our face. And when are we going to feel it? We're going to feel it in 2022 when it's time to go back to the polls, and all of a sudden now, because we weren't paying attention, because we weren't fighting back, we don't have the same number of days to vote early, or we can't do mail-in voting, or because we don't have a certain type of ID, we can't register, or we can't vote, or some other restrictive measure that was done back in 2021 while we were just, not paying attention. Now all of a sudden, here it is. And how does that affect everything? Well, because in some of these elections, it only takes a few people to swing the election one way or another, just a few. And so these restrictive voting laws can shift, the victory one way or another just based on a few hundred. In some of these local elections, literally a few hundred people determine who wins. And don't you think for a minute that these local elections are not very important? As an attorney, I deal with the district attorney's office all the time. I deal with the court system all the time. And who is in the DA's office has a huge impact on the laws that are being enforced, which laws are being enforced, who those laws are being enforced against. The DA just sets the tone for that county for the criminal justice system. So that's why these voting rights restrictive laws are so very, very, very important. Very, very important. If they weren't, our opponents would not be so focused on them. Okay? So, I hope you got something from this. Stay engaged. Stay absolutely engaged with what is happening with the Voting Rights Act. All right? All right. I'll be back probably every week with another video on this topic, especially next week when we know what this other case will do with the rest of the Voting Rights Act. I will definitely be back to do a live one way or another, whether it passes constitutional muster, based on the 6-3 conservative majority of the U.S. Supreme Court, or whether or not it doesn't. Either way, I'll be back. All right? Okay, you be good. Have a good weekend. Bye.